So I'll call the meeting to order.
Good afternoon, board members. There is a public meeting of the Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville. Pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meeting Act notice is hereby given that the Charter Review Committee of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of Said City, will convene a regular meeting on Monday, May 11, 2026, at 5 p.m. in the Commission Chambers on the second floor of Brownsville City Hall. We have a swearing. There's two members, I think. Mr. Ben Peña and Trey Mendez, I need to swear.
Yeah, have you all been sworn in? No? Okay, yeah, we need to swear 'em
You
in.
have.
Okay, great.
More vision at the same time.
Okay, we can do it at the same time then. Do you want to repeat after me? This is for the oath. In the name by the authority of the state of Texas. Do you want to repeat after me?
Yes.
I,
I,
say your name,
Ben Peña,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office
that I would faithfully execute the duties of the office
as a Charter Review Committee member
as a Charter Review Committee member
of the state of Texas,
of the state of Texas,
and I will do the best of my ability
and will, to the best of my abilities,
to preserve,
to preserve,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the Constitution and law
the Constitution and laws
of the United States of this state,
of the United States
of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Okay, and I'm gonna pass right now.
Just have them do the statement, the oath of office was for the record. Okay. We'll go ahead and get signatures.
Do it right now.
Mhm.
You need 2 copies. He's got one of mine.
I can repeat it again.
Thank you.
All right, next, I know we just called the meeting to order. We did the swearing in, and now she will proceed with the roll call.
Troy Mendez, Daniel Salinas, Ben Peña,
Here.
Nuri Galonsky,
Here.
Liliana Elizondo,
Present.
Evaristo Cárdenas, Aaron Rondon. We do have a quorum. The meeting started at 5, also for the record. Next, public comment. The Office of the City Secretary did not receive any public comment. Items for individual considerations. Consideration and action to appoint a chair or a vice chair and a vice chair. I know we did last meeting.
Yes, I believe last meeting, we had it was an appointment for that meeting. Now would be the appointment for the chair to run all the meetings. So you can remain with who you have or nominate someone else, and the same thing with the vice chair.
Okay.
I motion to keep Ms. Galowski.
There's a
I
motion.
guess.
There's a-
Who wants to be the vice chair? Liliana, fellow female?
Make a motion for Liliana as vice chair.
So we have a first and a second. First by Mr. Cárdenas, second by Mr. Peña, to have
I'll second his motion to have
Okay.
Commissioner Galansky as the chair.
Galonsky. Okay.
Okay, you wanted it separately.
You just need a second for Liliana.
I second Liliana, yeah. Okay.
Let's do the
Look,
chair
do we do it?
first and then we'll do the vice chair.
Oh, okay.
If it's okay for the record. So there was a motion for the chair.
By Mr. Evaristo Cárdenas to appoint Frank Galonsky, second by Liliana Elizondo. All in
All those
favor?
Oh, sorry. All those in favor, sorry.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Sorry, now, now I
Those in
get it.
favor?
So,
Those in favor?
All those,
oh,
All in favor.
all those in favor, right?
aye. It passed,
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
6-0.
Um,
Vice chair,
I motion for Ms. Liliana Elizondo.
perfect.
Be appointed.
Second,
second. So I've got a first from Mr. Cardenas, and any seconds? I'll second it myself. Any, all those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, well, that's good. It's over with. Public comments. Anyone?
Through the minutes from last.
Next item, consideration and
That's right,
action
sorry.
to approve the minutes of April 1st, 2026 meeting. They mentioned that there was this scrivener's errors on the minutes on the last name of Ms. Castillon. Well, just for the record, if we can approve the minutes with that correction.
I make a motion to approve.
I've got a first from Ms. Elizondo to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second from Mr. Cardenas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
So 5-0.
One absent. Public hearings. Presentation and discussion by City Attorney's Office on amendments recommended by the City Commission, including A, City of Brownsville City Charter, Article 5, Section 13, compensation. B, City of Brownsville City Charter, Article 5, Section 28A, Audit and Oversee Committee, increasing amount of committee members and edits for governing efficiency. C, appointive positions. D, campaign finance report. E, disciplinary provisions for city commission members.
But before we continue, have y'all, I know you called it earlier, but have y'all called the public comments?
I brought it up, it is out of order. Sorry.
Yeah, we stated it for the record that there was no pre-registered public comment for this
Okay.
meeting.
So we already did the swearing in. This is just a meeting outline of today's meeting. We've already gone through all this. So the first section that we're going to be discussing today is the compensation section of the city charter, which is regarding the compensation of city commissioners. So we prepared a table here for you all. It has a lot of information on it in order of population of cities in Texas. So starting, not every city, but some cities, right? Starting with the city of San Antonio with a population of 1.4 million, the mayor and the council or commission, depending on what they call it, what their salary is, and then the structure type for that particular city. So like I said, for San Antonio, the mayor currently makes $96,600 and the council makes $77,300. It's a structure type of a salary. Currently, if we move down to the center of the table, the city of Brownsville has more or less a population of 190,000. The mayor currently makes $40,000. With the commission, each commission member making $25,000 on a salary-based type of structure. You can kind of take a look at the different cities. If we go down to other cities in the valley, like the city of McAllen, they have a population of a little bit less than Brownsville at 151,972. Their mayor makes $600. That's a salary, $600 for the year. So it's kind of more like a stipend. And then the commissioners make $120. They also get $650 in reimbursements. City of Edinburgh does not have any kind of monetary compensation, but they do get some health benefits. City of Mission has a significantly less population in comparison to the city of Brownsville. They make the mayor, I'm sorry, makes $1,200 and the commissioners make $300 on a salary-based type of structure. If you want to move up to, let's see, if we want to take a look like Corpus Christi, they are maybe about double City of Brownsville at 316,000 in population. Mayor makes 9,000 and the council makes 6,000, again, on a salary type. As you can see, I mean, it's all different depending on the city. It just depends on how they have it structured. We have a couple of other cities here on this table. We go to the city of FAR, which is also in the city of Harlingen, which are in red because they're valley cities. FAR making 80 with a, I'm sorry, population of 81,000, mayor making 6,300, commissioners making 3,600. They also get health benefits. City of Harlingen, 5,000 for the mayor, 3,000 for the commissioners, also on a salary. They also, like, if you move all the way down to the city of Dickinson, which, yes, significantly less of a population than the city of Brownsville, they get paid per meeting. So $75 per meeting. So it all just depends. It's all over the place. So as I said, the current section of our city charter regarding compensation currently reads as it is in that first section of the table here on the slide. So essentially it says that the mayor makes $40,000 and the commissioners make $25,000. I'm sorry, $40,000 and $25,000, yes. So there's several recommendations that we can make. The first recommendation being that we leave it as is, leave the language as it's written, except changing the dollar amount of what is the actual salary for the mayor. For the
Can you
mayor
please
and
mute
for
your
the-
phone?
And for the city commissioner. So like I said, we can leave it as is, just changing the amount if the recommendation is to change the amount. The next recommendation that we would make would be to change it to not have a dollar amount actually listed in the charter. Instead, making it to be an ordinance that is passed by the city commission that would change the salaries by ordinance. So as you all know or may not know, ordinances require 2 separate readings in order to be passed. In this particular case, the way it's written right now is, and I'll just kind of read it, the city commission may provide by ordinance for compensation to its members, provided that such compensation shall not exceed the amount available in the budget for such compensation in any given fiscal year, and shall not be increased more than once per fiscal year. Essentially, it has to be allowed in the budget, and it can only be done for that particular fiscal year. Increased, right? For that particular year. And then it continues to read, an increase in compensation for the members of the commission shall not exceed an amount equal to the increase in the Consumer Price Index, which is published by the United States Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, for each calendar year from the operative date of the last adjustment of the compensation that was in effect when it was adopted. Members of the commission shall receive their actual and necessary expenses incurred in the performance of their official duties upon approval by the commission. So that would mean they would get their salary based upon ordinance, passed by ordinance, and they would get reimbursement, necessary and actual expenses. So they'd get reimbursement expenses, right? Which is kind of how some other cities do it right now. So like I said, that's recommendation number 2. Recommendation number 3 would be to not have the amount as listed in the charter right now, would be not to be changed by ordinance. Instead, it would be for the mayor to name a committee of people, qualified voters, where every 2 years they would meet and review the salaries of the mayor and the commissioners, and then make recommendations on those salaries. They'd make a report to the commission at a meeting, and the commission can either enact their recommendation, alter their recommendation, or totally reject it. In all cases where action alters the existing salaries for the mayor and the commissioners, the changes in salaries will begin immediately following the next election of city officials. And that would be every 2 years. So like I said, first one, and then I'm sorry, recommendation 4 would be no change at all, leave it as it is, which is the 40,000 and then 25,000. So just going back to it, recommendation number 1, leaving it the same, changing the amount. Recommendation number 2, making it by ordinance and and then having expenses. And then 3, having it done by a committee and then the commission approving or not approving. And then 4, no change at all. In regard to the next item, okay, so I guess if y'all want to do a discussion on that right now, we can discuss that, so that way we kind of keep it cohesive.
Question. The tables regarding the city population and the salaries for comparable cities, are you able to determine when the last time their charter was amended to include those salaries or those amounts?
I believe for some of them, it's included. So like if you look at Fort Worth, that one was just passed.
So Fort Worth, San Antonio, El Paso has a population error that's actually 600,000. But those cities recently, either in 2024 or 2025, have increased their salary. Some did it by charter and some have done it by ordinance, depending on the particular city. The one that probably had the most significant increase is Austin. These are effective this June 1st. And the salaries, as you can see, they're 151,000 for the mayor and 137,000 for a council member or commissioner there. So these are
So,
accurate as of today.
so for example, El Paso, when was that one? When was that one done? Most recent?
El Paso, I believe that was recent as well. Let me pull up our notes.
At what point will we know what the amounts are going to be on recommendation 1?
I'm sorry, could you speak into the mic?
At what point will we know what the amounts are going to be on recommendation 1 and 2?
Up to us.
That's what we're doing now.
I mean, yeah, it's essentially up to you all. I mean,
What is the recommended increase that they're asking for?
They are not asking for, they're not giving a recommendation on increase. That's what happened with the last charter review committee. The last charter review committee, they all agreed that they should be paid a salary, because at the time it was just, I believe, $10 a meeting. And if you're in the position, or if you kind of watch what they do as a elected official, you kind of see that it is it's almost a full-time job for some members. Others would consider a part-time job. And so you have the meetings at night, meetings on the weekend, frequent calls. And so that body considered it, they need to give a salary for the elected officials. What that number was not recommended. And so it was just a number that was made by motion when the city commission called the election. It was then just kind of thrown out there, if you will. But given that other cities have gone through and did recent adjustments within the last 2 years, El Paso was a couple of years ago, commission feels like it's time to take it back to the charter review committee and ask, should there be an increase? And if so, what is that?
How do we know where it would come from in the budget? I mean, is it available? What?
As far as funding,
Yeah.
yeah, so with the budget, I mean, with the budget, you have to set up a certain amount, depending on what the expenditures are and of course what revenue comes in. We are currently in the process of undergoing our budget requests as departments, and we're going to start having budget workshops with our elected officials. Now, when it comes to these positions, we will find the money for it. I will add that part of the request that management has acquiesced to is providing meeting office space So meeting location, as well as, um, right now, the elected officials don't have any support staff. And other cities our size, they do have their own council aides, or whatever you want to call it, district administrators. And so there has been funding that will be set aside for those positions, whether it's one per district or one that's shared by the mayor and then one that's shared by the district council members. And so there's budget for it.
I guess want to give my thoughts, since I think that's what we're here to do. And I think it's important that they be compensated, because time is money for all of us, right? Our time is valuable, and I know that they do spend a lot of time. But we also, on the other side, want to make sure we're not going too far where people are incentivized to want to run just to stop doing what they do and do this instead. We don't want, and I know we have term limits, but I think we just need to strike the right balance. And I'm on board with having some kind of maybe CPI adjustment or something, I don't know, but I do think it's important to compensate them. Does anybody have any thoughts on like whether it should be the same for all of them, or if any of the other commissioners do more work? I heard people mention that in the past.
Madam Chairman, I think since we have three recommendations, recommendation one would be that this body sets the amount. Recommendation two is by ordinance. And recommendation three is by committee, especially appointed committee. I think probably what makes more sense to determine the avenue of which we're gonna go first. Because if we're gonna go by ordinance and by committee, then the
Yeah.
dollar amount is irrelevant, right?
Right.
So that probably makes the most sense, is to us to determine if we're gonna go recommendation one, then we can start talking about the dollar amounts. If not, then ordinance, the commission would take care of that, and the committee would also take care of that.
Right, there's different, the different recommendations are based on what other cities do. Most cities do have the voters, set the salary for them, right? That's the cleanest way to get the most transparency, is having the voters vote for it. The problem with that, though, is, as like most employees like ourselves, when there's, cost of living adjustments that need to be made, it's very difficult unless that language is built in. So you could have something with the CPI built in to where cost of living adjustments are made, as time goes. With the thought is that the committee, which is the citizens that are appointed by the mayor, would come up with the salary amount, which is essentially what you all are here for, right? So it would be just punting it to another board or body. Now, doing it by ordinance, a lot of cities actually do set the voters have said, we are okay with our city council or city commission approving their salary by ordinance. And the thought behind that is, if they are not pleased with it, of course, they can do a recall election, or they can have support a different candidate, right? So that is the time where those voters can say, yes, we agree with the salary increase, or we don't. Of course, with public hearings as well and public comments. So there's different thought process. What works for Brownsville, we would defer to you all on that. And of course, your appointed commissioners.
Now, we know what the current amount is, right? In 20,000 each.
Daniel, can you please speak into that microphone?
Yeah, we know what the amount is now. Regardless of the recommendations, whichever recommendation, I would suspect that the amounts would not be less than what they're making now, right? We're not talking a decrease, we're talking an increase, right?
Well, that could be, that's up to you all. If you don't want to recommend a decrease, that could be your motion.
Well, I mean, if I were the person receiving the compensation, I wouldn't be too thrilled about getting a decrease, right? So, I was just, because it's open-ended here, recommendation one, are we advocating a decrease or an increase? And then,
Madam Chair, I think recommendation one tends to make the most sense because it's the most transparent. It's up to the voters. 2 and 3 kind of make it more so at the will of the commission, which can be manipulated. depending on who's appointed, and also if the commission's setting its own budget for its own salaries. I don't think that's a good idea. I think one makes the most sense. However, I think it does make sense if it's possible to build kind of like a COLA increase in recommendation one. I'm not sure if other cities do it like that or not, but I think one with some sort of built-in cost of living adjustment makes the most sense, at least for me.
I agree with that. Recommendation one makes the most sense to me.
And then also just for perspective, y'all, on the list that was provided to us, we're the 10th most populous city on that list. As we sit here now, there's only 6 cities that have salaries higher than ours. So, we're 7th on the list right now. We're the 10th most populous on this list. I know Houston's not on there, but Houston's mayor, I think Mayor Strong, right?
Right.
So right now we're already kind of doing better than others if you look at population, but we're 7th on the list now, so there's 6 above us.
The other option you can do too is keep the salary where it is now, but have the voters decide if they're going to do like a CPI or cost of living adjustments, right? So you're not setting you're not making a recommendation as far as the amount, but you're recommending, 40 and 25 seem reasonable, but we're going to allow the cost of living adjustment or CPI increase. So that's an option too.
Is the
Or-
commission still getting a car allowance?
Yes.
The salary? I'm not getting it. Sorry.
Well, I'm just asking for clarification because some of these state plus allowances, I know that the commission does get reimbursements. I mean, each commissioner has a budget for that.
Correct. Yes.
So
Yeah,
that's already in there. And then I know that there was allowances when I was on the commission. I just don't know whether that's still going or not.
Yeah, so the car allowance is still there. Commissioner will get with HR and figure it out.
That's the second time I get gypped.
It
Our
was around
apologies.
700, somewhere in that
But
range.
yeah, it's, I believe it's 7,000.
It's 7,000 a year.
For the car allowance. So we'll look into that.
So in addition to the salary, they get 7,000 a year for car allowance.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Above
Those
what
are-
they're already getting paid.
Correct.
And what other compensations do they get?
They are getting,
Insurance,
right now they're getting health benefits.
okay.
Have the option to opt in, but only 2 have opted in.
But is it paid for by the city or is it reimbursed by the commissioner?
It is, it's both. They are treated like an employee in the sense of they pay their portion and then the city pays their other portion.
Moses Sorolla might have something to say about that, huh?
A little bit. I know this was I was on the committee that put this on and that was 2 years ago. if I'm Correct. Okay. Are there any sitting city commissioners, mayor, that are not taking the compensation?
There, to my knowledge, there is one elected official who is not keeping it themselves,
Right.
but they are accepting it, but then diverting it to nonprofits. Some of them will actually, which is the reason why we are adding to the budget for each office, their ability to hire. Some of them have been using that pay to then go and hire someone part-time to assist them with the calendaring or, answering emails and stuff like that.
But they have to pay tax on it, right, Ben?
Correct. So the one individual that is getting the money, because the city can't divert it, they have to give it to the individual. That individual is paying taxes on it, but then turning around and donating it.
Taking a deduction.
There was one individual who was not allowed to receive salary, but that's because they had a conflict because they were a state employee.
Now, also my opinion on salaries, I think the mayor should get, and I'm biased on this, obviously, because I served and I can tell you what the position's worth and the amount of work that's involved. I didn't have a PR crew and I didn't have any assistants, but, I do think the mayor's salary should be higher than the commissioners, but I don't think there should be a difference in salary among commissioners. That's my personal thoughts.
Say it again?
Like, I don't think that the at-large commissioner should get paid more than the other commissioners. My personal thoughts, but I can only give you the perspective having served as mayor.
Is that what, is there a consideration of that, that the at-large commissioners get
Yeah.
an increase higher than the regular sitting city commissioners?
Yeah, I mean, you can structure it that way. It was a comment made by myself in passing, just talking about different options that you could do. And so mayor can get one salary, commissioners can get one salary, mayor and then at large can get their own different salaries, and then district council members. But I think in the salary amounts, I mean, you want to be fair. I understand that at large might represent more individuals because they represent the whole city. But when it comes to, they all have meetings to attend. They all go to events. They all speak at those events. The one office that does actually travel quite a bit is the office of mayor. And you have a former mayor here who can attest to that. I think he,
Which never got compensated when he was the mayor.
correct.
And you're okay with it, right?
I
You
came
knew the
into
job.
office knowing I wasn't gonna get compensated, so I didn't expect compensation, you know? I mean, I think that you come in to office expecting, in this case now, I mean, there's compensation. When I was in office, there wasn't, and I wasn't upset about not being paid. That's what I went into, right?
Right.
But now I think the climate has changed as far as the expectation. And I think it's good that officials do receive some sort of compensation because like Lil said, I mean, it is a big commitment. For me, it was more than a full-time job, right? I mean, if I would have submitted an invoice to the city for my 4 years, it probably would have been $1 million just based on work that I did. But again, I came in knowing I wasn't going to get paid. It was a volunteer position. Now it's not. It's just a matter of, do we believe that the compensation that's in place is fair or should it be increased?
And there's benefits for having a salary in place. 2 years ago, I was an advocate for it, but the reason, because all the cities I've been to, even the general large cities, have some kind of compensation for their elected officials. And I think by providing a salary, you are able to have a diverse group of elected officials for the city. Some people with the means are able to just, take off from their job and represent the city at, federal, state, and local events or meetings. And then by having a salary, you allow those working class individuals to be able to also have that chance as well, right? Of course, given whether or not their bosses allow them the time off, that's between them and their boss, but they at least have that ability to, supplement their income because they're not at work. They're over here, in Austin advocating for city's interests. So that's the thought behind having a compensation for the elected officials.
Will, the 40 and the 25 were set 2 years ago?
I'm sorry, what was that?
The 40 and the 25 amounts were set 2 years ago?
2 years ago, and yes, 2023.
So at in the spirit of the mayor's, consideration regarding cost of living adjustments, usually those are in the 5 to 10%, right? So a 10% would catch you up to standard cost of living, a 10% increase. That would put the 40 at 44 and the 25 at whatever, 27.5,
Right.
right? With the 10%. I mean, that's an option that this body could do as well. Just at the very least, bump up 10% to catch up the cost of living for the past 2 years.
Right.
And while that would be nice, often employees don't get that. And so I would want a condition on employees should get it first before elected officials. I just think that would be fair.
Of course. What does that look like, Will, with respect to the employees of the city?
Well, so you can make it contingent as
The budget.
yeah. So the obviously the budget would be where the cost of living increases for the employees are done. When it comes to the city commission, you could make it contingent. Not only based on CPI or other type of variables to measure, but also making it contingent on budget availability. And then, of course, if the employee receive a similar increase as well. Now, keep in mind, throughout the whole city, certain departments, certain employees in various departments might receive a performance-based increase, while others don't, right? So that's different from COLA. So we just need to be very clear about if you're going to make it contingent on when that would kick in.
I think we need to be mindful of a couple things. One, it's ultimately up to the voters. So whatever we do, it's just recommendation. But then I have some reservations about making any of it tied to commission action, because then it can be a perceived conflict. Like, in other words, even if, and I agree that it should be adjusted for cost of living, but if it's based on the commission giving employees cost of living, then in essence, the commission is, by giving employees cost of living, they're also doing it for themselves. So it's just, I'm just kind of concerned about tying any of it to commission action. It should, if there's going to be, if we think it should be cost of living, then we should build that into the ordinance that's going to be voted on, as opposed to the commission deciding it in some way, whether by setting a budget or by giving employees cost of living, which then triggers them getting cost of living. Just my thoughts.
The other thing to take in consideration is, while with the current language as it is, and I saw this with some cities when the Great Recession happened, a lot of cities had their compensation set by charter. But what a lot of cities were doing as they were furloughing their employees, they also decided to take the hit too. And so by ordinance or resolution, they were able to suspend increases or decrease the salary for the period of time until, everything was able to stabilize. And so a lot of cities did that. And so that doesn't mean that Brownsville couldn't do that. Brownsville could very much do that if we were hit with something like that, where we had to make cuts. City Commission could suspend the salary amounts or reduce it for the time being via ordinance.
What has been the traditional, what has been the average salary increase? I mean, in the corporate world, we go anywhere from 3% to 5%, no more than 5%. I've never seen a more than 5% increase in a long time. So what has been for the city, what has been for employees?
Yeah. So with employees, it's a little difficult because the employees have not received cost of living adjustments before the last two budget cycles. Over, I believe, Mayor, if I'm not miscorrect, or Commissioner Galansky, was a 10-year period where they didn't receive any COLAs, right? So the last two budget cycles, maybe even three budget cycles, have seen a huge increase in salaries for employees throughout the city, right? Because when cities can't run like a business, but they can follow business principles, right? And we saw where employees, especially like with some of our, we were losing employees to PUB and other agencies, including corporations that are for profit. And so with that in mind, we've had some COLAs, and more recently then that created a compression, right? And so the last budget cycle addressed that compression, because you had employees that were here for many, many years making almost the same as someone who just came in, right? So that's your compression. So and it's not criticism on the prior commissions, but for not addressing compensation, yearly as they go through the budget, they did increase the amount of maintenance, if you will, that they had to go back and kind of make it competitive with other cities as well and other businesses. Same thing can be said for streets and other things. Now, not to go off topic, the city has a robust CIP program to catch up with the maintenance of streets. Same thing with employees' budgets. And so I kind of see the salary or compensation for council and commission the same way. Most cities have moved away from a per meeting basis to have some kind of salary. And so to me, the 40-25 should have been a little higher, but they took a conservative approach. And it probably was an attempt to kind of bring it into be competitive, if you will, with other cities that are similar size. If you look at El Paso is about 3 to 4 times our population size, and they're about 95-45. But Laredo, we're almost there with Laredo. We have the same number of ports. I think we even might have, we have deep sea port. I don't think Laredo has that. I think Laredo has that, right? Yeah. So we have a deep sea port, we have a space port. And their salary is 75, 50. And so that was actually the recommendation that legal had almost 3 years ago. But again, commission decided to do a conservative approach and they went with 40-25. But that was almost 3 years ago.
I mean, are we gonna get, I think we can give recommendations. At the end of the day, the commission has to vote, right? So we don't have to give an exact number, right? We can give our thoughts, which I understand is what happened the last time.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that with Trey, that having the commission decide is just the wrong way to go. And I also think that having that committee every 2 years is just kind of a way to circumvent this process. So I think that's just more work for everybody, to be honest, and it should be something that's more automated. I was in a meeting one time and somebody said, you want less friction on the commission or committee members, right? Or whatever board you're talking about. So having that be a thing that has to come up every 2 years, I think is too much. I think you have more trust if it's just set, and then maybe 6 years go by, like in this case where you're saying it's been 3 years, now let's look at it, that makes sense. But to say we're doing it every 2 years, it's going to get out of control. I mean, it could. And if we go back to that, I think third option, where if the commission is doing it by ordinance, I mean, you could say like, well, we're all about to be term limited, let's just go for it, and then we're out. And then what? The city of Brownsville has to pay for it. So I think we just give them our thoughts and let them decide what the fair amount is. But I do agree that with Trey as well, that you got to look at the fact that we're not that bad off. We're a little low, I think. I don't think we're that bad. And I do think we should consider that Brownsville is growing. And if you want to grow, you want to have the best people in leadership. And so we probably do need to go up. Those are my thoughts.
Another thing that I would like to bring up, I've seen now 3 different mayors, you and John and Tony Martinez. And I think chose not to have an assistant, and John has one and Tony had one. And I don't know how you did it without it. I mean, maybe.
It wasn't a choice for me. I wasn't given an option.
Well, but Tony and John are paying for it out of their own pocket.
Well,
so-
John's paying it, I think, out of the money he receives from the city, but yes.
Yeah, but then he's paying the taxes on the money, right? So, so if we could, with the way I've seen the mayors, it's a full-time job and a half. I don't think it's unreasonable to supply them with at least an assistant. Whether or not they choose to delegate is a different story, but is there a way that maybe we could add language to that so that a mayor is provided?
Yeah, we could we could add language that's vague to indicate where, as appropriated in the budget, et cetera, commission is allowed to have their own staff. We could do something like that. I get worried about having language that locks it in, especially with voters, because voters could easily say, no, I don't want you to have this. And it really should be a management decision, of course, with commission approving the budget, saying, yes, we believe that you do need positions. As a matter of fact, most of the people in your management realm here at the city have been advocating for you all to have appointed council aides, if you will. That would be in place of the city, whether it's part-time, full-time. And so just recently now it's coming to fruition. And I think that's just, change of management, the time grows, the city is growing, and so they see that there is a need for it because you see the elected officials, they're inundated with emails and calls, et cetera, and they can do your constituent services relations for you, right? And so it's up to this committee if you want to recommend it as a charter amendment. But I would defer to management and commission and just let it go through the normal process of management providing those positions and commission approving it through the budget.
Yeah, I think
But
that's the best
defer
way,
to you all.
commissioners. Y'all can just do it as a commission or through recommendation of the city manager. I think it's probably good for you to build in that position through the commission rather than it going through the voters, because it becomes too complicated. I think y'all should do it anyway. You have enough in the budget to do it.
Yeah, that is a management staffing issue. So, yeah, and then you start considering, it's like, well, you've got 6 commissioners and a mayor, right? And so does each one get an assistant or 1 assistant for all 6 or 3 assistants for all 6? And you've got those different gyrations of how that workload is going to be shared. But that definitely is a management function that should be appropriated to the fund, to the annual budget.
Which also creates a job or jobs,
Right.
which is good.
On that, let's say we all just go with a no change, that option. The city commission could still put it on their agenda without us coming to an agreement
Yeah,
here.
to be fair, they can accept or amend or deny any recommendations y'all make.
I don't know if y'all wanted this time to open it up for public hearing, just because we hadn't done that yet. So if there's anybody here that wants to speak on it as a public hearing, just because we do need to have a certain amount of public hearings by charge.
So this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here that would like to speak on the matter, please feel free to step up.
Y'all can continue. I just wanted to make sure we had it open.
And then if we could get a motion to close the public hearing for the record.
Second,
I've got a first from Mr. Peña and the second from Ms. Elizondo. All those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Just for clarification, that's just on letter A.
Correct.
Can we see the options again?
Sure.
The third was
Third is
The
for the
committee.
committee. And 4 is nothing.
ordinance committee.
But these are not set in stone, like Will was saying. I mean, y'all can add in, I know there was discussion about adding in the COLA increase, making it contingent on budget availability, and that going to employees first. So, so does it need, these are just recommendations. Does it need to be these?
Do you need us to come to a decision today or?
Well, no, I mean, we have, there is, of course, discussion about when you want to have the election, whether it's November or
May.
next year in May. And that might change how fast we need you all to make a decision. But we didn't put that on the agenda, but I mean, we could receive direction because it relates to this. But if you all plan to have the election in November, then yes, we would need a recommendation the next meeting or so that we can take it to commission and have them act before August.
Would this committee make the recommendation for November or May? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. That is also, that was discussed at the first meeting and we were going to bring it back up.
Nor did the commission have a preference on that?
We haven't discussed it.
No. I mean, you're obviously gonna get more voters in November. I'm thinking if you go anywhere above 75, 50, I think it becomes something that won't pass for sure. I could be wrong. I'm not even sure if any increase is gonna pass, but I think if we do anything above 75, 50, we're probably making a recommendation that won't fly. But I also think we need to look at building in COLA.
So the COLA could be technically on the ballot, like part of the amendment.
Correct. It depends on what you recommend. If you recommend a certain increase, let's say you want to go to 50, 30, then with the COLA, what I would recommend is you break it up into two different, like, the first one should be, should the city commission receive salary of 50/30? Second proposition would be, should the city's commission salary be based on a CPI increase? Just so that if one passes or doesn't, you still have one or the other, right? And the 50/30 might not pass, but then the CPI might pass. And that will allow the 40/25 to increase on its own.
I like that. So we need like a consensus, I guess. Is consensus or motion stuff?
And we don't want to put you on the spot to say, hey, you got to decide now. What we can do is, of course, if you decide to table it, we can always bring it back at the next meeting, right? As you all, maybe you go out and discuss with your colleagues and maybe do your own research, or maybe we'll have more comments at the next public hearing. But you can definitely make a recommendation now, or you can table it and just kind of.
I would motion to table it till the next meeting.
But in the meantime, I'd ask that for the next meeting, which I think is already scheduled for June, that we do choose if we're going to try to go for November or wait until next year.
Okay, we'll have that on the agenda.
Need a second. You need a second. He motioned.
Oh,
Table.
yes. So I have a motion to table from Mr. Cardenas. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I've got a second from Ms. Elizondo. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries, and letter A is tabled for June.
Okay, so for letter B, this is regarding the audit and oversight committee changes. It's section 28A in the charter. Some of the changes that were recommended are to increase the number of members of this committee from 5 to 7. Also to change the appointment of the city auditor from the committee to be appointed by the city commission. This one's a little different in the sense that right now the city auditor is appointed by the committee and not by the city commissioner or the city manager. So that's just one of the proposals, to have it included in the city charter so that the city auditor is appointed by the city commission. Another proposal is that there is a contract for that city auditor. And then the other recommendations were that certain procedures that are included in the section just be removed and added via ordinance, depending on the needs of the committee at the time. So it's not very much, but those are just some of the things that are currently being proposed at this time.
Can I ask for clarification on number 2? Appointment from AOC to the city commission.
Yes.
Is that the,
So currently, right now, the Audit and Oversight Committee chooses and appoints the city auditor. It is not a city commission, but the city commission does set the salary for that individual, and they do that through the budget
okay,
process.
so it's for the appointment of the city auditor, not from the committee, but from the commission.
Correct.
Okay,
So, correct.
yeah.
Currently, right
that's-
now, the only individuals that are appointed by the city commission is the city manager and city attorney. The city auditor, for whatever reason, when this audit and oversight committee was established, in the draft of the language, it had that the committee would appoint the auditor.
Okay, yes, that is good governance practice. With respect to the 5 to 7 members, has the committee expressed concern over the need to increase that number, or what is that stemming from?
So yes, so the committee, I should say the prior committee, because the membership has changed. With some of our members that have rolled off, Commissioner Gowan and Commissioner De Los Santos. And I think there was one other individual as well. But the desire was to increase the membership from 5 members to 7 members. Right now, if with all our boards and commissions, we're going towards having 1 appointment per commissioner or mayor. And so that's one of the reasons why they wanted to increase it, as well as the decision is, how many commissioners will they have on the audit and oversight? Obviously, you want more citizen input on there, but it's still good to have a mayor or two, or not mayor or two, but mayor or commissioner on there so that you can have that kind of governance, institutional knowledge.
And the employed by contract is the city auditor, right?
Yeah, the employed by contract, right now, the city manager is the only one that's allowed by the charter to be employed by contract. Almost 3 years ago in 2023, the city attorney was included on there and I was pushing for that removal of it. This is not necessarily by the Audit and Oversight Committee. This is more the city auditor requesting this of the Audit and Oversight Committee. He has come from places where the city auditor is also contracted by the city, kind of like the city manager. And so they wanted to add that, or he wanted to add that provision in. But that would be a recommendation by the Audit and Oversight Committee, as well as you all. These certain procedures, just to reiterate, there are certain procedures in there that would be better put in an ordinance as procedures change. Corporations follow, I think, Ben, you might know this, or Mr. Peña, sorry, you might know this, I think there's a blue book. The cities follow a yellow book
Yellow
on
book is-
auditing principles.
Yeah.
And so the procedures in this audit and oversight committee are more aligned with the blue book. And so we've thought it's best that we leave the procedures out, but the policy and the structure in the charter.
I have a question because I've seen this happen. Audit and Oversight Committee was created by charter, but if we leave it to the city commission to appoint the city auditor, is it possible then that the city commission could subvert the whole AOC by not appointing someone? Because in the past, they had an audit committee and they dissolved it because that's what the majority of the commission wanted.
Right. Yeah, so that is a possibility. But the citizens have the ability of also suing the city and seeking a mandamus to force the city commission to appoint a city auditor. And besides, I think we would, there is law that you have to have a city auditor or an auditor, whether it's external or internal. You do have to have that position. And a lot of smaller cities will hire external auditors for that reason. We're blessed to where we're able to have an internal auditor.
Yeah, so that's something that's required by statute, so you can't really get away
Right,
from it.
yeah, but I mean, there's, not that Brownsville has, but some cities have gone astray, and the citizens are able to mandamus the city to force their hand.
Commissioner, I think that's one of the reasons we started off with three when we brought this back. I think originally it was three, because I think I remember appointing three
Right.
members.
Right.
But that was one of the reasons we did it that way, because we didn't want any issues with what happened before to happen again. But I think now, I mean, it's a different commission.
But it could always go back.
Well, it always can. You're absolutely right. But Ben, I think, the 5 to 7, when I came on board as mayor, we kind of made a real effort to make all the committees 7. That way every commission member had an appointment. Because before, some of the practice of the commission was people would just blurt out names and try and beat each other to appointments.
Right.
So by doing it 7, then everybody kind of had their appointment. So trying to make it standard. So that makes sense. Yeah.
So are all of these recommendations from the committee or from the
All
auditor?
of these are recommendations with the exception of the employed by contract. Now, when I say that, I will say that the committee has approved and commission approved it. It was the play on words. The charter says an employment contract. The only one that can have an employment contract is the city manager. So in the instance of Mr. City Auditor, we drafted a severance agreement. And that's only if he is terminated without cause would he receive the maximum amount, which is state allows you to pay out now 20 weeks. Before there was no maximum, now there's a max.
Is that request just because the person in question wants the job security, or is it something that is beneficial to the committee or the city itself?
Well, I think it's a combination of that. I think, yes, of course, as an individual, that person wants job security. I think that's any employee, right? But I think also best practices, most cities have their city auditor and city manager on contract. Most cities have their city attorney on contract too, but I was adamant against it. With regards to the city auditor, the last city auditor we had, we did lose because we weren't able to offer them a contract. And so then there's other personal reasons, but that was one of the big reasons why they decided to leave the city.
Ben, what are your thoughts on that? Ben? What are your thoughts on that as someone who does audits?
No, these are all good provisions. And if anybody has any other objections, I'd like to make a motion at this point.
Sorry? No, we don't have proposed language for this at this time, but we can bring it back with proposed language.
Before we make a motion, I don't know if you want to open it for public hearing and close it before you make the
Oh,
motion.
yes. I thought you're like the voice. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who would like to speak to this issue, please feel free to stand up to the microphone and voice your opinion. Seeing that there is none, I'll take a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
I've got a first from Mayor Mendez and a second from Mr. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to change the composition of the audit and oversight composition from 5 members to 7 members, and to change the appointment of the city auditor from the Audit and Oversight Committee to the City Commission, and that the city auditor be employed by contract, as well as certain procedures to be removed and added via ordinance.
I second.
I've got a first from Mr. Peña to make these 3 changes and a second from Mr. Cardenas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hold on, before we take a vote, is there a recommendation on the term of the contract, or is that going to be set by the commission?
We would follow what is in place for the city manager if there is no
Which is
recommendation.
a year or
2 years.
And you want that 2 years to be in the proposed amendment?
Yeah, you want to make an amendment to the motion?
No. I'm just asking for clarity on that, just so that we know, because that wasn't in here, so I didn't. know.
Yeah, so that was the intent. The intent was to mirror the city manager's term.
Those are details, the subject to negotiations with whoever the person's gonna, right?
Well, I
The
mean,
term and pay and.
right, yeah, those,
benefits and-
but the city charter is very clear as far as contracts. The city manager is only allowed to have up to a 2-year
Okay.
contract.
So then this would be setting the max.
So this would, yeah, so it would be the same for the city auditor if they were allowed to have a contract.
Employed by, I'd like to make an amendment to my motion to change it to employed by contract no more than 2 years.
Okay,
It's
We have-
just a recommendation, right? So I mean,
yes, this is.
they
just a
can work out
recommendation.
the commission can work out the details. We're basically just saying we agree with the recommendation.
Yep. Correct.
So if I understand correctly, the motions that were, or the decisions we're making today, though, are more guidance to when we later come back and vote on language, right? Like, this is just giving direction to how, what language might be proposed later on.
Yeah, if
the
you
ballot?
want to amend your motion to come back with language that you all can approve,
We can
then
do
we
that.
can do that. I think with what we have done in the charter review committees is in the past, they would have given us recommendations as far as we want to do this. And then the actual language was taken to city commission where they individually voted on each ballot proposition and what the actual language change would be if it were to pass. So we can do that with you all.
Well, in the interest of time, instead of having to revisit the subject again, we should just vote on it and then tuck that in as one of the items achieved, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're doing. You're making a motion to recommend this to the commission.
And we would
Okay.
bring the language to commission.
Oh, so we as a body, the chair, the charter committee will not review the proposed language at the end?
No, it would be the city commission. That's how we done it the last couple of times.
Okay.
But if you want, again, if you want to amend your motion, we can bring it back with the language.
No, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just thought we were, coming up with stuff.
Yeah, I guess at the end, I mean, this body's just tasked with bringing recommendations to the commission. So it's just a matter of, do we want to do it all at the end? Or do we want to kind of, if we're ready to do this one, I guess we can. And then if we need to change it before we submit something to the commission, I guess we can do that as well.
My thought is to do it as we go, because once we get to the end, and it's like, well, what do we decide, or what do we discuss? And it gets a little complicated with respect to each of the individual items as we're knocking them out. I think we should.
Right, and I think since these are the major changes, the substantive changes, the language itself that will effectuate these, I mean, that would be fine tuned with legal's input, and then we'll of course bring it to commission. But what I'm completely okay with you all helping with the verbiage, but I think it does drag out the meetings more if you go through and kind of look at, every period and space and, but the commission will do that. So as a body, the commission will go through the language themselves, but it's really up to you all, or some of the commissioners.
Just for my edification though, Mr. Peña, you changed from 5 to 7 members, changed from, the decision of who to appoint from the AOC to the city commission. What were the other terms?
Employment of the city auditor by contract up to 2 years. And then certain procedures to be removed and added via ordinance. With respect to the Audit and Oversight Committee charter, right?
Correct.
So I have a first from Mr. Peña and I believe a second from Mr. Cardenas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Now for section C, these are appointive positions. As we discussed just right now, currently the city manager and the city attorney are the only ones that are appointed by the city commission. We just talked about how now city auditor would be included in that via this particular charter amendment election. Another thing that was proposed would be to include the city secretary on the city charter, because even though the city secretary's office is required by cities and is included, in throughout the city charter, there isn't a specific section that creates the office. So the proposal is to include the city secretary on the city charter, and with however you all would recommend that position to be appointed. In the city of Laredo, the city secretary is appointed by the city council based on the recommendation of the city manager. In the cities of Austin, San Antonio, Corpus, Westlaco, Edinburgh, and FAR, they are just outright appointed by the city council. In the city of Harlingen and San Benito, they're appointed by the city manager with the consent of the city council. And as we mentioned for the city of Brownsville right now, and also the city of Mission, they're solely appointed by the city manager. So it's just a recommendation to have the city secretary included in the city charter, and to have a recommendation from this body as to how that position should be appointed. And that's essentially it. And it could be the same as it appointed by the city manager, not include the city commission if that's what Charles' recommendation is, or I mean, however y'all want, but it's just something to have the city secretary's position included in the city charter, because right now it's not in there.
So throughout the charter, you see the word or the position, city secretary, mentioned throughout, right? But nowhere in the charter was the actual office created. And it is a requirement in state law that the city have a clerk, a municipal clerk. Most cities call them a city secretary. And so basic household cleanup is to create the office. Now, now's the opportunities, if it's going to go before the voters, to actually decide, well, who will be appointing the city secretary? Will it be the city manager? Will it be commission, or a combination of the two? Currently, right now, the city manager is appointed by, the city secretary is appointed by the city manager, excuse me. And that's only because it was interpreted that way, because in the charter, it says the only two positions, well, it says the city manager is in charge of all personnel and appointment positions, with the exception, and it names the city attorney. It doesn't even include the city auditor. So that's another fix that we need to have too. And so this was a request to come before you all to see, one, do you want to create the office officially? And two, how would that appointment be made? And we actually have our city secretary here right now, who can give you her input if you'd like.
If she wants to.
If she wants to, of course. I want to put her on the spot. But she came from other cities where I have come from, where the city secretary is appointed by the city commission. But as you can see,
Yeah.
there's cities do it very differently throughout the state
Yeah,
of
the city I
Texas.
came for, previously, I was appointed by the mayor and the council, and was hired by them on a contract similar to the city manager. And then the city before, of course, the city secretary as well. I was the deputy then. She was also hired as, through the mayor and the council as well. So this one was different, from being under the city manager, appointed by the city manager. But it is a statutory position, right? That our office.
What is the practical effect of changing it? So like, if there's a new city commissioner, a new city, I guess a new city manager can change who the secretary is? Because they're in
Yeah,
charge?
so, I mean, like right now, we're in the process of recruiting a new city manager, right? They
Mhm.
could come in because they are responsible for all personnel. They could, I mean, obviously, commission will have a say because they could affect that position, but they could clean house, if you will, with all the positions that are not appointed by city commission, and that would include your city secretary. I don't anticipate that happening. But to answer your question, that's the effect, is
And if,
they could come in and change.
but if it changes to be appointed by either the city commission or the manager with approval from the commission, either way, that, so I guess then it would stay if there's no new city manager, like she would stay in her position? I mean,
Oh, was she, yeah, I mean, she would stay in her position. So
it
if,
either changes with the city manager or it changes with the commission,
right,
or stays the same throughout.
right. So I guess option one would be you could keep it as is, but codify the office in the charter, right? And then, of course, Ms. Rios would keep her position no matter what. The other option would be to create the office and either do what Laredo or Austin or Harlingen do, where it's a combination of someone is appointing the person with the consent or recommendation of the other, or straight appointment where the city commission appoints the individual. The city secretary's office, to me, is, other than the city manager that runs the whole city, is the most important office in the city, because they basically are the record keeper of all the minutes, the agendas, the contracts.
And
They
statutory requirements.
And it's a statutory
compliance.
requirement.
That's
Um,
it.
a lot of the elections, everything is filed with them. And so, there is a concern that if you have commission or council appoint the individual, it becomes political. That's what you usually hear as far as that position goes. But a lot of the requirements and duties that the city secretary has are ministerial duties. So even if politics were to be put in place there, the ministerial duties, like I said, citizens, they could raise a lawsuit and mandamus the city secretary to do certain actions that are required by state law. And so even though the appointment process could get political, the same thing can happen with the city manager, right? There's always going to be some kind of politics involved somewhere. So the recommendation is to create an office no matter what, but the method of appointment is up to, this body to recommend, to either keep the same or modify it.
Well, with respect to oversight and supervision of the city secretary, that currently falls under the city manager and would probably fall under the city manager regardless of whether the commission appoints it or the city manager hires a city secretary. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what was,
The oversight and supervision of the city secretary is done by the city manager
the
operationally, right?
currently right now, yes.
And so even if the city commission were to appoint or hire the city secretary, that purview would still fall under the city manager, correct?
Portions of it, yeah.
For supervision. But I mean, you could also put in there the removal, as far as like with the consent of city commission or something like that. I mean, different cities have it in different ways.
Yeah,
Right. But as far
I
as
guess-
oversight, I mean, when it comes to the appointed positions, like the city attorney, city auditor, there's a reason why they're appointed by the same body, right? And not all follow under the city manager. So you can have that separation of powers, checks and balances. It makes sense with the city attorney, city auditor, and the city manager, because at some point, the city auditor might be auditing the city attorney, or they might be auditing one of the departments in the city manager's office. City attorney might be involved in personnel matters in the city manager's office or any of their departments. And so you want that separation. Similar with the city secretary, there could be some abuse of the office if the city manager directs the city secretary to do certain things dealing with the agenda or minutes that a commissioner or mayor might not agree with, right? But because of the charter, they don't have that ability to bring it to that individual's attention. The only person they have the ability to bring it up to is the city manager, who in the first place may have put that restriction there.
I kind of see this like in the judicial process where you have the clerks and the clerks are separate from the judges, like it's their own office, right? So I mean, I think this should be independent of the city manager. So I agree we should probably create it as an appointed position, but I'm kind of lost as to who should pick who it is.
In the courts, how are the district clerks picked?
They're elected.
They're elected, but then the other.
And they run their own office and it goes. Like, I think she probably wants some independence to be able to make sure the laws are followed and that it's not subject to, the
Yeah.
city manager wants to change this or that.
Yeah, because there's some like compliancy and stuff, and as far as direction with the agenda, if there's an item request, right, there can be a policy procedures of 2 signatures or 2 requests from the body. But that can be, as far as the office, if it's created in its own, then the secretary will report to the governing body as requests, like similar. So the city manager's office and the city secretaries, we would work closely together like we do now, right? Trying, with the collaboration and information that is being shared as far as compliancies and things that the office does operate when it comes to elections or when it comes to annexations and anything that our office is the filing authority. We still collaborate and ensure both offices are running forward, right, and still in parallel as far as the information that's ongoing.
So it's
But yeah.
operating the way we want it to. It just needs to change.
Yeah, so right now it's operating
Independently.
where we all get along, right? As
Right.
internally, right? One city, just throw that out there. But I have been in other cities where the city administrator, because it's a smaller city administrator appoints the city secretary. And it turns into where the city secretary is weaponized. And if a city council member or an alderman in the smaller cities wants an agenda item, the city administrator would decline, right? Or make it convenient to where they don't put it on the agenda item. Here in Brownsville, we don't have that per se. We do have, 2 individuals would sponsor an item and it will get on the agenda. But there is that potential for abuse in the future, right? The city has had some scary times, right? And right now we're doing really well. We could revert to scary times again. And so by keeping it separate, you keep that checks and balance in place.
So if the city secretary position becomes appointed by the commission, then only the city commission can take away also?
You could, you could do it however they want.
Right, yeah, if you want to have it to where, like, let's say you follow, Austin, San Antonio's route, where the city council appoints the individual, it would be also them that terminates that individual too, pretty much like the way it is right now with the city manager or city attorney. I mean, technically right now with the auditors, we all heard you couldn't dismiss your auditor. It had to be the committee. And so by doing Laredo's or Harlingen's,
It has to be on the recommendation of the city
Right.
manager for both. In order to appoint the city secretary, it has to be recommended by the city manager and then the city commission approves it. And then in order to terminate that person, it needs to be on the recommendation of the city manager and then the city commission approves it or doesn't approve it.
right.
So it has that checks and balances for both.
On the Brownsville mission model, if commission wants to do away with the city secretary, they couldn't because the charter prevents them from entering or interfering with any of the personnel matters.
Because it's all city
I think
manager.
as a starting point, we should do that. Like, make sure that the office is an appointment position that exists. Like, it has to be filled, right? Does
Okay.
that make sense? Like that it has to exist. Like, the commission can't say, we don't want a city secretary this year. That it be in the charter. Right.
Didn't you say that state law requires that municipalities have
Yeah.
a sort of that position? Whatever you
Correct.
decide to call it.
Correct. But it's one of those where it's, you know,
Well,
Yeah.
first things first is to codify it into the ordinance, right?
right. I
The
mean, the
position.
governing body could ignore that state
And then the
requirement.
second part is who appoints, and obviously there's pros and cons to both. I can see how abuse from both sides can happen. Maybe create a situation where the ultimate is a city commission would approve at the recommendation of the city manager.
Right. So that would be like
Probably the best-
Laredo's.
That's probably the best of both.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, because you want the most checks and balances on something like this. You don't want a rogue city commission getting rid of a city secretary that's doing a good job. You also don't want a city manager to do it. And then
Yeah.
you don't want a rogue city secretary. So I think the best process to kind of keep the checks and balances there is approval by city commission at the recommendation of the city manager.
So if the city commission really wants them off, they have to
Have the
convince the city
recommendation.
manager to make that
recommendation, yeah.
recommendation, right? And so that's the check in that, so.
Do we want to open it and for public hearing? I don't think we've done that yet.
So this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who would like to comment on this issue about appointed positions, specifically the city secretary, please feel free to go up to the mic and say your piece. Seeing as there's none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a first from Ms. Elizondo and a second from Mr. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So, oh yeah, do y'all want to take a vote as to which?
Sure. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to codify the office of the city secretary into the city charter to be appointed by the city manager and termination to be made by recommendation of the city manager to final approval of the city commission. That make sense?
Do both require approval from the commission, appointment and termination? For your
They
motion?
both require hiring and firing?
Is that what you're saying?
Hiring and firing from recommendation from the city manager to the city commission.
Okay.
Wait. Just like Laredo, right?
So just to clarify,
Just to clarify.
following Laredo's model. They're
I think
appointed or
Yes.
terminated by the city council based on the recommendation of the city manager.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it sounds like the wording is gonna be what you put together, but essentially our recommendation, if approved, is that there's input from both the manager and the council, right? City commission and the.
Okay.
I'll second his motion.
I've got a first from Mr. Peña and a second from Ms. Elizondo. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
So next we have section D regarding campaign finance.
So, in the last year and a half, the city commission has adopted an ordinance with certain campaign finance type of restrictions. More recently, last, I believe, December, November of 2025, we modified some of the provisions. And just as a comparison, looking at Brownsville, of course, this was before. It was 1,000 for mayor, 1,000 for council, as far as what the limits was per individual. PACs and other corporations was 2,500. And looking at Austin, set by charter, 400. McAllen, the voters of McAllen through an organization, I forget the organization, had a charter election that would limit the campaign contributions to 500 per mayor and 500 per council. Where in the charter, it was 10,000 per mayor and 5,000 for council. That provision, though, it was taken to court and the court struck it, saying that it was unconstitutional because it was too restrictive. Even though that was in a charter election amendment, the court said that's way too restrictive. It was infringing on people's First Amendment rights. And so, in looking at some of the what other cities have done, Brownsville, Dallas, excuse me, is 5,000 for mayor, 1,000 for council, and then PACs and other corporations is 10,000. That's 2,500. But that's in Dallas. In looking at the law that's out there on campaign restrictions, it can't be too restrictive to where it infringes on someone's First Amendment rights. And in looking at the last couple of elections, up into 2024, the expenditures didn't really go over the average that we had selected for individual contributions or even PACs. There was a few that were really large contributions to certain individuals since 2021. I think there was one that was $40,000 campaign contribution to one individual. But generally they stay below 5,000 or 2,500. And so the recommendations that commission has adopted for their campaign restrictions would be 25 per person per year and 5,000 per PAC or companies per year. Cash limit 100, and then they added expenditures based on how much they spent in the past. So mayor or at large, they would have the ability to spend 100,000, 35,000 in a runoff, commission 50,000, 15 in a runoff, and then they have loan limits, right? So there is a current ordinance in place for these campaign limits. And the benefit of having an ordinance in place does allow us to be fluid with the changes in law, right? As soon as we saw that McAllen's charter amendment was struck, we immediately, and of course there was a lawsuit in Austin about certain language within their ordinance. We immediately reviewed our numbers again and made the numbers less restrictive, right? And so there has been a request or a question of, do we codify these campaign restrictions? Because a new commission could come in and do away with these restrictions, right? So that is always the concern that the prior commission has is as I approve and adopt this ordinance, is another commissioner going to come in and change it, right? And the whole purpose of adopting this was to keep transparency and have certain limitations, make it, fair playground for everybody to run for the office. The problem is, of course, as the attorneys in the office, we don't want to be too restrictive in the charter amendment to where if we adopt the whole ordinance as it is into a charter amendment, other than a case that says our charter amendment is void because of constitutional protections, we wouldn't be able to have any amendments to it for another 2 years, right? So it's very, very restrictive. The ability, though, is it does take it to the voters, so the voters can decide and have a voice. And yes, I do want to have campaign limitations or campaign restrictions. But then the caveat, of course, is it's difficult to amend. What some cities have done, of course, is you could codify the ordinance as it was adopted into the charter, or we could have language that requires that the city have some kind of campaign finance restrictions that comply with federal and state law, right? So that would be basically the language is the city commission shall provide by ordinance campaign finance restrictions. That way it is required by the body, but it doesn't lock in the numbers so that we can then come back and amend. So it's a difficult question. The question is, do we add this as a charter amendment to where a commission can come in and change it? So that would be the first question, or we just leave it by ordinance. Then the second question I would say is, how much of it do we codify into the charter? Or do you want to require some kind of restriction, but let the commission at that time decide, right? So there's kind of a careful balancing act, if you will.
What about something in the middle, like where you codify the requirement that they look at it every 2 years for an ordinance? Then they have time to do it.
Right.
They don't have to get a full vote,
And right now it's an ordinance.
Right now it's an ordinance.
And you're proposing, or I guess the thought is to make the ordinance less restrictive?
Well, we have made the ordinance less restrictive already.
Oh, okay. So
From-
these changes were already done.
Yes, these
Okay.
changes were already done. The red is what was changed. 'Cause
Okay.
we didn't want to get a challenge, right? As soon as we saw the cases in Austin and San Antonio come out, as well as the one in McAllen, we thought it prudent to come before commission and say, hey, maybe our ordinance is too restrictive. Let's make it less restrictive so it can stand a constitutional challenge. The commission and the charge is asking, do we want to codify this? Because there is a fear that another commission might come in and repeal this ordinance.
So right now, the ordinance was changed to be a 1-year cycle?
Yes, 1-year cycle. And before it was a 2-year cycle. So it was as restrictive as we thought it should be. And then of course, with the case law that came about, we decided we need to be less restrictive.
Well, just curious, on the McAllen case, who were the plaintiffs?
I don't recall. I know that the city elected not to appeal the decision. They were, I guess, pleased with it, but I don't remember who the plaintiffs were that challenged that lawsuit, the election.
Is there ever a situation where you think that these would have to be reduced again? I mean, is a trend going towards making them higher? I mean, AI, I don't know, things could change.
Right.
It's all moot.
I mean, it's, you could come up with a formula, right, based on the prior election, maybe like say a percentage, like, certain campaign contributions or expenditures cannot be more than 10% of the prior election's average. But that's difficult to calculate and also difficult to enforce. Because even the ordinance itself, the enforcement mechanism, there's nobody on staff that actually reviews these. I mean, we review whether or not we get the finance reports because they're required, but we don't go through and see whether or not someone got more than 2,500 that year.
Correct.
We leave it up to the opponents to turn in their opponent so that it's almost like a campaign-driven process.
Wait, so now the limit for mayor and at-large maximum you can spend for your campaign is 35,000?
For mayor,
Yes.
yeah, for mayor's runoff,
Oh, okay, sorry. And so for the general, oh, it's the 100,000?
100,000.
Yeah. Two every two.
Yeah, and that's just based on what was spent in the last couple of elections. I think in the runoff, I don't have it. Well, yeah, in the last, let's say 2023 runoff, the average loan expenditure was 20,000 that a person lent themselves. Average expenditure for the runoff was 10,000, right? And so looking at the numbers, I think we're there to where the numbers will fit and they're not too restrictive. Knock on wood.
So this screen right here is the proposal or the change that we're.
Yeah, so this is already an ordinance that's in place that candidates have had to adhere to for the last
Okay.
last
Last
election.
year.
And coming up to the next election, next May, they'll have to adhere to this. The question is, because there's always a concern that something that the commission puts in place, kind of like what y'all heard earlier about the audit and oversight committee, another commission might come in and they might do away with those protections, or what's seen as protections at least. That's the concern, right? And by adding it to the charter by a charter amendment, not only do you give the residents the ability to vote and have their voice in the election, say, yes, I do want campaign restrictions. It also codifies them to where a commission can't come in other than through a charter amendment to do away with those provisions. So question is, if you want to have it in the charter, that's the first question. Do we want to have campaign contribution limits or some kind of finance code in the charter? And then the second question to me would be, do you put all of it in there and then just amend it every 2 years, or just rely on the courts to amend it for you by court order? Or do you put a basic skeleton in there for the commission to follow that they can then extract and adopt the actual numbers by ordinance?
And was this amendment or were the changes from 2 years down to one and the monetary limits, was that a unanimous vote for the commission?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it seems pretty good the way it is now. It's just a matter of, do you want to turn this, do you want to make this a charter election or not? Because you're, in a way, you're restricting it as well. It could work both ways, and that's assuming people even vote for this.
Right.
Because the language can be very confusing. I don't know. What do you think, Commissioner? I mean, is there, on the commission, is this something that y'all think is a good idea to codify? Like to put in a charter?
It's been a while since we discussed it. We just had, when we approved these changes, it was by input of the three who ran previously. In a way, as I said before, I liked having a limit on how much I could spend. It's nice because as you know, people come out of the woodwork and ask for money everywhere. So now you can say, well, I've got a limit. Some people say though that that's a restriction on speech, right, by money. I don't really see it because you can just donate, your time. I think it's easier for the candidate.
It's easier for the candidate to have it in a charter, like to actually
Oh.
have it as a, because it's already an ordinance, so, and the
Yeah.
ordinance actually, it's pretty good, but is that, do you think it's something that the commission actually wants to be in a city charter?
Because think about the elections right now, like how much they, with those, it's nice also to have, that you can't, the limit on the size of the signs, because otherwise you could rent all these trailers and, it's crazy how much you can spend. So you would hope that people would keep it at a reasonable level so that there's still people who can enter. But you never know. Like, I just see these current elections, I'm like, sometimes it seems like they're covering the city, right? And on all sorts of things.
Well,
At
you
the
should-
gym, I see ads.
You should have a sign ordinance as far as how long signs can be up. Because right now it's like 365 days a year, there's a sign somewhere. That's probably something to consider, not necessarily through charter, but maybe through an ordinance. I'm not sure that there's a sign ordinance now that applies to this specifically, like,
To this?
yeah, no, to campaign.
The campaign, yeah, we do have a sign code. We don't look at the content. We look at whether it's on premise or off premise. And even with trailers, we don't look at the sign that's on it. We look to see that it is parked in an unimproved surface in a lot that might not be commercial. Or even if it is commercial, it's still on an unimproved surface. We have been citing individuals for that and coming up with a procedure to tow away at some point as well. And I think Commissioner Golansky was referring to the electioneering ordinance, but the electioneering ordinance is different from the campaign finance ordinance. They hand in hand, they go under the same chapter in the Code of Ordinances, but this would be how much are able to spend. One idea is if these numbers were commission approved unanimously, if you wanted to codify these in the charter, you could add in a CPI increase, right? Where it's 2,500 per person per year right now, but maybe the CPI increases it to 2,300 per person next year, right? So you could have that to where it's fluid with the CPI increases. And that would take care of the ability of having to go back and increase anything unless we have to, of course, we get sued and there's something that's out there that changes and in case law, then of course that's a consideration, but we would not enforce this at that time. We would follow whatever a court order is.
It becomes codified in the charter and say the higher powers that be say that it's not constitutional. If the voters approved it, do we have an obligation to challenge
We would,
the ruling?
what we would do is we would take it to city commission in executive session and discuss that. And it would be that body's decision whether they want us to appeal let's say it's a district court, to appeal the district court's decision. And because we believe it's narrowly construed, least restrictive way, compelling government interest, all those buzzwords. I don't know how or what happened in McAllen, but they had that option. They could have. But given the expense of litigation too with appeals, they might have thought it's the restrictions they had in place, which was 5 and I think 10 were already in place. They felt possibly that was sufficient restrictions in that and for their elections.
I think
500 does
McAllen
seem
was
a lot.
lobbied by an outside group to put in really restrictive campaign finance ordinances or charter. What is there an ordinance or charter?
This
No, McAllen.
McAllen is a charter,
Is it really? Wow.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, and the charter was to reduce the amounts to 500, which 500's restrictive.
Could we just, require campaign limits be set by the commission without putting numbers? And then that way it has to be there and they've got to decide. And if they say something
Yeah, that's recommendation too, I think, right?
Right. So, I mean,
But that it be required, I mean, like that
Right.
the charters say you must set them. Because does it currently say you must set campaign finance limits?
right now it does not.
Okay.
The charter has no language in there.
Who would go into it as a, we
Right. So,
must? Okay.
so part of recommendation two, of course, we put campaign finance restrictions, but we can actually spell it out to where you have to have campaign contribution limits, expenditure limits, loan limits.
So instead of shall, must.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the same word, but I think that might be best.
This is a public hearing. If anyone here in the room would like to say something, please feel free to step up to the microphone. As no one stepping up, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Got a first from Mr. Mendez and a second from Mr. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And if you're stuck at this moment, you could table it and we can bring it back with compensation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna suggest, is this is probably one that we need to table. So I would just make a motion to table this.
Got a-
Second.
I've got a motion to table for Mr. Mendez and a second for Mr. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have one more. It's disciplinary provisions for city commission members. And right now, there is no other language in the city charter of removing an elected official other than the recall election. Right? And so a question came from commission is, do we want to have disciplinary provisions in place within the charter that may even include removal? Because right now we do have the code of ethics, but within the code of ethics, there's limited discipline that can be taken upon a commissioner. Includes anything from a letter of reprimand to maybe a suspension. What are the other? But removal,
To like legal, if
right,
if it's,
if something's criminal,
if.
bringing it up to the authorities, but there's no removal. And so other cities do have removal provisions where a 2/3 vote would remove a elected official for willful violations, right, of the city charter. But it's narrow, right? So it's narrow in the sense of so that other elected officials within don't weaponize it. It's narrow to where it's if you attempt to dictate something that you're not allowed to by charter, right? So if you interfere in personnel matters with the city manager, interfere with the appointment of employees, et cetera, those are the instances where you could be disciplined by your governing body, right? And so there is a hearing process that we have drafted, and this is language that we've taken from other cities. And so, and it doesn't have to just include removal. It could include suspension, removal of certain benefits, if you will. And so that is the question is, one, do we want to have something in place within the charter where the commission is able to discipline one of their own members, right? And then two, what does that look like? And so just borrowing language from other cities that have something in place like this, we've brought that forward as a recommendation if you want to have something like this in place.
Who would have the burden of bringing it like to the jury and to decide, oh, yes, there have been willful violations, as you said, which merit then a punishment?
Yeah, so it could be the commission, city manager, or here in this instance, it's the third paragraph, the commission, the city manager, any person or committee authorized by either of the two. So in cities where this has happened, the city commission will, the city attorney will appoint the city commission and the city in sort of like a pseudo hearing. And the other, like the person that's before that disciplinary body, their colleagues, is able to have their own attorney or represent themselves. And they would basically have a hearing where witnesses come before them. So it's almost like an ethics hearing, but it would be before the city commission. And that's how some cities have done it. Is there room for abuse? Of course. Most definitely there could be room for abuse. And the thought is, of course, you're, as an elected official, you are removing someone that was elected by their constituents, right? Or at least the majority of the constituents. Do you want to put that power in the commission's hands? You could narrow this down to where if it's rather than a violation of the charter, maybe some kind of criminal negligence that they're found guilty of, right? Because then, you know, not that that would happen or hopefully wouldn't, but there's different ways you can structure those language if you want to have the ability to remove someone or discipline them.
Is there any language in the current ethics ordinance about this? Like about, let's say, bad acts by a commission member? Isn't there some language regarding?
Yes, there's
Like
language.
a referral for criminal prosecution or something like that?
Right.
Yeah, I have some real concerns about a commission having the ability to get rid of a member, even if it's 2/3. I don't know. I mean,
There's been stuff that rose to the level of being worthy of it, but I find that even the ethics process right now, it was not ideal. So before we got to that part, I would say, like, let's fix up the ethics code and make it stronger.
yeah, because of the ethics code, that's what I thought. That was my recollection, that there was some sort of referral provision in there. I think that's kind of what you want if there's a bad actor on the commission. But having a commission remove another member, that one's tough. Again, it's not our decision. I mean, we would only recommend it to go to a vote. But that one, that can be hard because if there's a 5-2 or, I mean, you can get rid of somebody just because.
And we did put in, of course, as far as the provisions, there is recall language in there. So if that individual's constituents wanted to recall that individual, of course, they have to have a petition, follow the process, get it approved, get on the ballot. There is the process for the residents of the city to do away with the elected official, but there's nothing in place for the commission. Even under the ethics ordinance, if the recommendation is to remove an individual, under the charter, there is no mechanism for removal, right? It would be just basically some kind of discipline, suspension, reprimand, or recommendation to the authorities.
Right.
Well, but even the way the ethics code operates right now, whoever has the burden of bringing the proof is already at a disadvantage. And then whoever's accused is also, well, then either they defend themselves or they have to hire someone. And it becomes really political because I think we need to even just fix the process of how to bring a complaint
Right.
and how to provide the fair jury.
In going through some of the other hearings, and of course, it's related to this, so we feel comfortable talking about it. But in going through some of the process in the Ethics Commission, it is very clear that it needs to be amended, the process itself. And so Elisa is here. She's been working with the the Ethics Commission to come up with those recommendations to bring before City Commission to make it stronger, more efficient, just as lessons learned from the other hearings that we've had. But the question was, of course, you know, even with the most recent individual that was found by the body to have had some kind of finding to where it was worthy of a reprimand, it was letter of notification is what they issued, right? The next step would have been letter of reprimand. The issue didn't arise to reporting it to the authorities, but it was very clear that they didn't have the option, unlike with an employee, an employee can be recommended for removal by the ethics body. They couldn't do that with the city commission. And so that's where that idea came up in, okay, we could, at the most, what some might call a slap on the hand. That is essentially what they have as far as the ability, unless it's criminal, of course, right? Then the authorities would get involved. But again, this is a provision that can be weaponized. It's possible that it might have been in other cities. I've seen it used. In my experience, I've seen it used once to remove a mayor. And it was because that individual refused to pay their property taxes, right? So that's, willful violation, official misconduct. It was all part of their MO, if you will. And so that individual was removed. That individual did sue the city, and the courts upheld that removal. And so in that instance, I think, it was appropriately used because there was other issues with that individual. But in this instance, it might not work for the city of Brownsville.
Well, an example of official misconduct, what would that look like? I know it's a very vague term, but other than criminal, right? A felony, pleading guilty to a felony offense, right?
Right. So,
that's
a lot of the times with official misconduct, I think of like what's actually like violating, something in the penal code, like abuse of office or abuse of confidential information for personal gain or somebody else's personal gain.
conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest, like those kind of violations, right? But there's already a mechanism in place for those to be prosecuted under the law, right? If you have the appropriate evidence. And so,
But do you
there's
get
already
removed?
another mechanism in place.
But if that happens, you don't get removed necessarily just because there's
Correct.
an investigation. I think there needs to be at least a mechanism to remove someone who's been like indicted or possibly more. That
Correct.
doesn't exist right now.
There is no mechanism other than that
Should
person
have that.
resigning.
People can
Yeah, but
refuse to
in-
resign.
In and of itself, it's not. I mean, you'd have to adjudicate the whole process before you can take any action.
Right, right.
Because
So,
he's innocent until proven guilty, so you really can't do anything.
correct. That person's, the courts are, that person
You gotta let the
might
court
have,
adjudicate
their
the
term
matter.
might be ended before they actually go to trial.
So, couple of things. 2/3 of the commission is a very, very high bar. Okay. And so when you're talking about official misconduct and the 2/3, it seems like there's no middle ground between like a censure. At this point, you're just going directly to immediately expel and vacate the position, right? And so, I'm having a little bit of heartburn going that extreme in cases where you might have something in the middle that may not warrant full expulsion from the commission. So I get your point. I mean, it is pretty onerous that could very easily be weaponized
Right.
against, but again, 2/3 is a very high bar, in my opinion.
That would only be 4. Because if the person that is accused of something,
5, yeah, it's 5.
okay, but so that would include the person that's, I guess they could vote too, right? The person being accused of doing something. I guess I'm just kind of confused. So this is only for non-criminal things.
Anything that constitutes official misconduct, and I get it, because we're not defining what official misconduct is. But in most cases, dealing with elected officials, it usually does include some kind of criminal element to it. Maybe not one that rises to the level where they're found guilty, but there's enough evidence at a civil level to find them liable, and therefore you gotta go,
I think when it's like a more serious offense, I have no problem recommending including something like that for removal. But if we're not going to define it clearly, like something small, then I think it's going to be weaponized for sure.
Exactly.
So I think maybe if anything, just for extreme circumstances where you get, 5 out of the 7 agreeing that someone needs to be removed for something bad, not just maybe you had a conflict of interest. That's too dangerous. That's weaponized, for sure. A lot of things.
Unfortunately, with conflict of interest, you get the whole gamut of the effect of, it could be millions of dollars, it could be kickbacks, it could be, a lot of.
I mean, it's just subject to interpretation. So it can be used for nitpicky things that maybe
Yeah.
shouldn't require a whole hearing or whatever, but. I
I'm
don't know.
sorry, we're just looking, we're looking at other cities to compare, and Elisa did find like language in there for forfeiture of office. So instead of disciplinary provisions, there's forfeiture of office, like when you will vacate.
Mandatory grounds. And like when a mayor or a council member automatically forfeits office if they do certain things.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't, at this point for this city, they don't even have to go to the commission. It's just an automatic, and that's how they have it here.
Kind of scenarios, a warrant or.
So for this one, it says, the mandatory grounds, the mayor or a council member shall forfeit office if he or she, A, lacks at any time during the term of office any qualification for holding the office prescribed in this charter or by law.
We do have that. We do have that.
B fails to meet the residency requirements for election to office.
And we have that as well.
C
We have that.
C is convicted of a felony. D fails to attend 3 consecutive regular council meetings without being excused by the council. E violates the prohibited personal financial interest provision set forth in section 12.01 or any other provisions of this charter that prescribe forfeiture. I don't know what that section is, but regarding financial interests. And then F fails to attend 6 consecutive or non-consecutive regular council meetings in any 12-month period with or without being excused by council. And then there's potential grounds for forfeiture of office. And this says, if the mayor or a council member is convicted of any criminal offense other than a felony or a Class C misdemeanor, the city attorney shall file a petition for a declaratory judgment with the district courts of the county for a determination on whether the crime is one involving moral turpitude. If it is determined by the district court judge that the mayor or council member was convicted of a crime involving moral turpitude, then the city council shall automatically order a recall election at the next allowable election date under the Texas Elections Code and dispense of the certified recall petition required under section 11.05 of the charter. So I think for this, they wanted to codify or put in here specifically regarding a definition of moral turpitude, because there are certain misdemeanors, Class A and B misdemeanors, that a council member or commissioner could potentially be convicted of that don't qualify for automatic forfeiture. And so I think here it includes now, if they're convicted of a Class A or B misdemeanor that involves moral turpitude, then that's when this kicks in for the removal. But they have to go, in this case, they have to go to the court for the court to make a determination on whether that particular crime is considered a crime of moral turpitude. So crimes of moral turpitude are kind of like theft, fraud, like a DWI is a Class A or B misdemeanor, but that I don't think is considered a crime of moral turpitude. I don't think. Yeah, but for sure, things that call into question kind of your moral compass is kind of what, in my head, I kind of think of when I think of a moral turpitude circumstance. So that's how this is here.
So, in my opinion, those criminal acts are already covered in what you just read, right? And so this is the gray area that would not necessarily involve a criminal offense, correct?
Correct.
And so if that's the case, why would we immediately go to expulsion? I mean, as opposed to censure or reprimand or what have you. And that's a little bit of the heartburn that I'm having with respect to immediate expulsion by 2/3. That's pretty serious, of which I think is already covered in the current statute. Right?
Well, that wasn't our current, that's an example. That was from another city, right?
This is another city. Right. Yeah, this is another city. We don't have this. No. This is a different city.
We have a couple of them, but we don't have all of that.
Yeah.
Because I know we have the residency one and the qualifications of holding office. I
Right,
think.
so there is one provision in there that you can kind of play with. It is where the governing body is the judge of qualifications for their colleagues, right? So that's where the residency requirement or the other requirement of what was the one above A?
Oh, lax.
Lack of the qualifications, the body that would determine whether that residency has lapsed or the qualifications are no longer met would be the city commission. But those are the very limited instances where they actually judge the qualifications, which are those two.
A question. I mean, obviously, situation like this can get pretty political. But the question is, with our existing processes, is the recall election. What are the parameters for a successful recall? What are the things that have to happen to have a successful recall? Because one of the concerns that I have is basically going against the will of those constituents that elected individuals to begin with. So what are the parameters? And have we historically had any successful recalls that anybody could think of?
That's a good, so it is, to have a recall, a petition that meets all the requirements of state statute, signed by at least 10% of the voters registered to vote for a successor in that district, whether it's at large or the district, would be enough to trigger that recall. But as far as one that's been successful, Myra and myself are pretty new to the city. I don't know if Blanca remembers, but
It's because you have to get 10% of registered voters. So if it's a citywide position, only 10% of the people that are registered actually go out to vote. If it's a district position, yeah, it's almost impossible.
yeah, I think I had heard a rumor 2 or 3 years ago of someone trying to do a recall petition, but they couldn't get the 10%.
Especially because we have such low voter participation.
And then the petition itself didn't comply with state law requirements. So even if they got the voters, we would have told them, sorry, this doesn't comply with the petition requirements.
I think they tried to do that in the past few years, right? Yeah, they tried, but
Right.
I don't think they got enough, and it was an uphill battle. So,
This is probably another table one. What do y'all think? Yeah.
I don't know if we opened this one for public hearing. I don't remember. Okay.
this is a public hearing. If anyone here would like to comment on this, please step up to the podium. One thing I would like to bring up is there have been situations where city commissioners overstep their bounds. And so how do we try to get people to stay in their lane, basically? While removal might be a bit extreme, but maybe, and this might be for the ethics committee, just to give them a little bit more teeth, like, hey, this is above and beyond your role.
Right. I think I have heard also of city attorney or city manager reminding or educating possibly that individual or individuals about, what they can and can't do, because they might be a first time commissioner or, they forget. But with the ethics, like, that's a good point, because the ethics is complaint driven. That is by affidavit, right? So, there's no language in there for city manager or the city's attorney to start that process, right? They would be the only ones that would know, or maybe another colleague or a citizen. But yes, we can look at the language of the ethics ordinance and come back to that body and
Well, and it
recommend
might be
something.
very difficult for a city manager or a city attorney to do it because technically they're your boss.
One of the bosses, yep.
So, but the ethics code is in the charter, so then wouldn't we have to propose a change to that?
Well, the ethics code is not in the charter, it's by ordinance.
Okay,
So it would be just two
amendment.
readings, an amendment.
okay.
We're almost
Well-
there on that.
If there's any further discussion, or I'll entertain a motion related to this.
I think,
Motion to close.
I've got a motion for Mr. Peña and a second for Mr. Cardenas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries and the public hearing is closed. Any motions on how to deal with this?
Motion to table.
Got a first for Mr. Peña and a second for Mr. Cardenas. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
and before we adjourn, just a quick announcement. The next charter review committee meeting, of course, if we need to change it, we can,
Don't they have a date? Do we?
is I think June
Oh, do we?
1st,
Oh, okay. I didn't know that we.
June 1st at 5:00.
Does that work for everyone?
Yep.
And it's going to be here in City Hall, right? Because, or
Yes.
did,
City Hall.
June 1st, it's a Monday.
We have at least one of them.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Madam Chairman.
I've got a first for Mr. Peña and a second for Mr. Cardenas. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.
Meeting adjourned 7:11 PM.